The James Show Podcast.
Man, I'm kind of bummed out because this whole Deion Sanders news. You probably heard Mike Trainer just explaining there. Deion Sanders beat bladder cancer. And it's in the rearview mirror completely because they took his whole damn bladder out and they made another one out of some of his intestinal wall tissue. Sounds gross, but man, that's a scary kind of story. And why does that affect us so much? Well, unless you're a transplant here. I mean, you grew up. Man, I graduated high school in 95. So the Cowboys won their Super Bowls like right at the height of my most impressionable, formidable years. So you take Deion Sanders, you take the triplets, you take some of those guys. I mean, they're forever seared in your consciousness. And, you know, I see what other people go through when some of these older people die. Like a lot of people were more upset about Ozzy Osbourne dying than me. Well, because Ozzy Osbourne was big when they were in high school. And so really it's a piece of them died. They never met Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy Osbourne wouldn't know him if they walked in the room. But they now live in a world post-Ozzy Osbourne. But to see the person that Deion has evolved into over the years, he didn't evolve like Ozzy Osbourne. He became something better, stronger. Someone, as the years went on, you were more likely to listen to him and accept his wisdom. The dead opposite of what Ozzy Osbourne did in his life. But I don't know. It's really sobering. And so once we go down that road, I don't think we can come back and do anything serious because it's some heartbreaking stuff. And he's going to be okay, but he's not the same. And just to hear him at this press conference, you know, he got a little religious and rightfully so. It's something most of us do when you're forced to contemplate your own mortality. But we're going to hit that again at 2:35. I've got to tell you the actual historic news first. I mean, this is a bigger deal as far as what goes on with the history books and things that actually affect your money. Because like Trump had just announced a new trade deal that was signed with the EU. And so that's a whole slew of countries. That's huge. And if we can open up some new markets there, our economy not only will bounce back to what it was under the previous Trump, it could be bigger than it was. This is also a huge step, a bargaining chip in our unification against Russia. You know, if the EU and the US are having this spat on economic terms and tariffs and trade and grinding that to a halt, and, you know, it kind of makes it a little harder for us to unify and turn toward Russia and solve that problem. Well, now that our little internecine dispute is done, I have a feeling Russia's going to get a little more focused. Here was Trump announcing the deal with the EU PM.
Thank you very much. So we have good news. We've reached a deal. It's a good deal for everybody, I believe. And I think you were saying this is probably the biggest deal ever reached in any capacity, trade or beyond trade.
Yeah, he wasn't going to say this is an above average deal or this is a pretty good bill or I'm pretty happy with this deal. No, it's pretty much the biggest, best ever. It's the most magnificent thing you've ever seen, believe me.
I think you were saying this is probably the biggest deal ever reached in any capacity, trade or beyond trade.
It is.
Yeah, that guy cracks me up. Next one. The numbers he's throwing around here are huge. And it's easy for me to forget that if you kind of think of the European Union as one country, it's like another America over there. They just haven't all agreed on the same language or music or food. But as far as economic power goes, as far as their population goes, as far as their purchasing power, that's a market that's kind of on par with the United States. And so when we talk about how America is the number one biggest market that everyone wants to open up to, well, Europe kind of fits that bill as well. For us, who else is going to be able to afford all the stuff that we make and export? Because we make expensive stuff. We don't sew jeans together. We're not snapping together cell phones. We're not making the little plastic toys that go into your Happy Meal. The things America exports is things like airplanes and cars and, you know, big, complex, expensive things. There's not a whole lot of people who can buy it outside of a few economically developed zones. And Europe's the biggest. Look at these numbers, though. One of the biggest things they buy from us is energy. Like, this doesn't even sound like a real number. This sounds like Joe Biden when he just makes up numbers like
$1 billion, $400 trillion, $600 billion.
But he starts off with the energy number, which I think $750 billion. That sounds huge.
So those things are $750 billion, $600 billion, opening up the country. We are agreeing that the tariff straight across for automobiles and everything else will be a straight across tariff of 15%.
Well, he goes into some more details, but they kept coming back to a couple things. Automobiles and oil. Automobiles and energy. Automobiles and gasoline. Some version of that. So I think it's the other big ticket item that's on here is they're going to be buying a whole bunch of defense equipment from us, which that's fantastic. I like that. So I think it was another $750 billion when you add in the defense. So we're talking about a deal that is already above $1 trillion. We're talking about a deal that's just from the stuff he was mentioning, more like $2 trillion. That's a lot of dollars. So that's fantastic. Now, I think the more important thing about this, and one of the reasons that this will help you out financially, open up markets. That means our biggest companies can get bigger. That means all you got to do is sit pat on your 401k or your IRA. You got some index funds out there. They're just naturally going to go up a little bit more than they otherwise should. Now, you're not going to be able to turn around and immediately go buy food with that. But at the end of your working life, when you go to tap into that IRA or when you go to tap into that 401k, and it's going to be nice that it'd be 25% bigger than it otherwise would be. And it's easy to see where if you like put limits on trade, well, this is going to stop this, or I'm stopping these exports, or I'm doing a blockade. And it's a lot harder to see the good things that happen from open trade because it happens on such a macro/micro level. Like if we all get a few dollars richer every day, we don't actually see that. But after years and years of this, we'll definitely feel it. And the other big thing about this is now that we have this resolved, we can turn our attention to Russia. Problem is, you turn on the news, not a whole lot of Russia updates. Well, it's actually really wild over there. We have drone attacks that have hit Moscow at this point. Don't you think that should be newsworthy? I know we're going to spend a lot of time talking about a football player's bladder today, and that's ridiculously important to me too. But here we're in a hot war with Russia. We'll get an update with you on that. He's a regular guest who's on from Rigaku. He's a chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear consultant. And I think he takes out the trash sometimes, too. Dr. Jeffrey Broder, welcome back to the James Show.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate the invitation. And yes, I do sometimes take out the trash.
You're a useful guy over there. You do everything. Dr. Jeffrey Broder, but let's sort of ease into the Russia situation here because Trump had announced a trade deal over the weekend with the European Union. And a big chunk of that, $750 billion of that was in defense spending. So is that something that Russia would care about or it would get their attention, or is that just standard business as usual?
No. That's something that's going to hit Putin pretty hard because that's sophisticated combat equipment that's going to go from our private industry to European countries and then donated, as I understand it, to Ukraine.
Donated, I love that.
Yeah, they're clamoring for it. They want more of it. And in terms of volume, I think Russia can produce, legacy 30-year-old tanks pretty quick. But when it comes to some of the sophisticated equipment that comes from our private industry, they just can't match it.
So does this make the peace talks with Russia a little more urgent? Because aren't we in like a 10 to 12 day peace deal pause?
With Russia? No, there's been talk about a peace deal. If there is a peace deal, neither Russia nor Ukraine know about it. On the ground and drone strikes for the last 15 days have increased significantly. Not a whole lot of ground has changed hands. It's almost like West Point football, 2 yards up, 1 yard back kind of thing until you score a touchdown in the fourth quarter. But it's hard slogging there. I anticipate this is going to intensify and get worse. Because about 1 November is when the winter weather is going to hit in Ukraine. Snowfall and winter winds are going to make use of these small drones, almost obsolete. They rely extremely a high reliance on their optics, and you just need a little snowflake on the lens, and it makes it invaluable again. Not so much your medium and long range drones that have a point of origin and destination already plugged in. But no, it's and the other thing, what struck me about the deal that the president made today is that in conjunction with Ukraine drone strikes, is that the Russian people are going. These sanctions and secondary tariffs, when they kick in, are going to take about 2 or 3 months to kick in. That's about the time that winter is going to hit Russia. They're going to be in a really, really bad place to stay warm and fill their bellies.
Well, that's scary for them. We're talking with Dr. Jeffrey Brodeur from Rigaku. I mean, we don't have war-related famine in these first and second world countries, do we?
None that's reported. I mean, the Hamas and Gaza. For how much credibility you want to put into the reporting. I mean, into the reporting. I think a lot of that is sensational. I'm sure there are people that are starving in the Gaza Strip. I'm not trying to dilute that at all. But there are parts of Russia that are out in the hinterland, and they're almost all on their own, operating kind of off the grid. Moscow is going to be a challenge this year, I think. If Putin can't satisfy the natives, if you will, especially in the capital city, he'll be challenged internally, I suspect.
Dr. Jeffrey Brodeur, is Ukraine having some manpower shortages?
Yeah, so they've had a challenge recruiting to fill the ranks of their army forever. I think outside of the first 60 or 90 days, where we had civilians that were training, if you want to call that, kind of a 10-day training, but they cannot recruit their young. It's almost as if Ukraine is trying to subcontract out their freedom to somebody else who will fight for them, because their young have appeared to choose survival or living someplace else in another country, as opposed to fighting for their country and their freedom. And it just reiterates, it's a bumper sticker, but I believe in it. Freedom is not forever. It's generational. And there's always somebody that's going to challenge your sovereignty, a little bit or a lot. And unfortunately, Ukraine, this is a 7-year-old problem if we take in consideration Crimea. So there's nothing new about this to them. They have really got to step up, because right now there is no other nation that I know of that is willing to fill the ranks of their military. We're willing to donate equipment, train, organize, and equip them. But I don't see boots on the ground from another country in the near time.
Well, this is going to be interesting to watch, because in this generation of warfare, it looks like manpower isn't nearly as important as it was in years past. You could just always swarm your enemy if you had 10 times as many men. But if you have, 10 times as many drones as they do, that seems to be where the real action is.
Well, and drones is a summertime tool. Remember, in November, when the winter weather hits, these small drones are not going to be as effective. And lithium batteries, if they're still running them, most of the commercial small drones run off of lithium batteries. You get lithium battery down to about freezing temperature, 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and they don't like that very well. They don't respond. They don't recharge as well. They don't hold a charge, a number of things. And we talked about the optics and snowflakes. The utility that drones offer a ground force is that it makes them more lethal. It's like another sensor, right? So as long as you have shooters and you have sensors that can detect an enemy from miles away instead of feet away, then you can engage the enemy much, much earlier. You can be much more effective as a small fighting force, which in the end means an infantry battalion in World War I could probably only govern ground about a mile square. An infantry battalion in 2025 from the United States Army can govern and control territory probably 100 square miles. And that's because they are more lethal. And all of these sensors that allow them to detect and interdict and do battle damage assessment is much more sophisticated.
Well, war is terrible and it's hell, and I don't celebrate it, but some of this technology is, for lack of a better word, kind of cool. Dr. Jeffrey Broder, thanks for the update.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Dr. Jeffrey Broder from Rigaku. Now, he's going to be okay, but Deion Sanders had bladder cancer, and they say had in the past tense, as in it was discovered, it was treated, it was removed, and it is now no longer a problem. But he does have some other problems. We'll get into this. So first off, the medical side, and then we'll get to the sad existential stuff.
Or something we call very high risk non-muscle invasive bladder cancer. So we did discuss options. We discussed some options of treatment in the bladder, and we discussed bladder removal as well. Given his commitments to his family and to the team, elected to undergo a bladder removal. We performed a full robot-assisted laparoscopic bladder removal and creation of a new bladder. And I am pleased to report that the results from the surgery are that he is cured from the cancer.
All right, cured. She used the word cured. However, I didn't know we could make ourselves new bladders. I don't want to get too much in the weeds on the medical side of this because it's kind of gross, but she said they used tissue from the intestines. Large intestine, small intestine. Don't know, don't care, it's gross. But I'm just glad to hear he's going to be okay. Now his life's going to be a little bit different. Life without a bladder, and, the bladder serves some pretty important functions there. I tell you what's weird is seeing how well he's dealing with this. Now, I've never had any major medical issues happen to myself. I had a kid get sick a couple years ago, and it broke me pretty quick. I was not in a good mood. I was not cheery. I was not joking with anyone. I was not having a good time. It was a beating. Now, granted, this is something Deion dealt with months ago, and he's in the recovery phase of it, and they're just kind of admitting to the outside world that this is what he has been going through, and this is what's different about him now. But he came out, and I don't know if his PR people told him to do this, or Deion's just naturally a great guy. He wanted there to be some meaning to his suffering. He wanted there to be some sort of greater good that can happen because he had this bladder cancer snuck up on him. Ripped out one of his organs, basically, and now he's having to make all kinds of accommodations to live life post-bladder. And so I think this was the message he came back to the most during the press conference. He must have gone through this little tirade about 6 times. Go get checked out.
Get checked out. Because if it wasn't for me getting tested for something else, they wouldn't have stumbled up on this. And make sure you go to get the right care, because without wonderful people like this, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today, because it grew so expeditiously, I could say. But please get yourself checked out, especially African-American men. We don't like going to the doctors. We don't like nothing to do with a doctor. You know that. So I'm not just talking to the brothers. I'm talking to my Caucasian brothers, my Hispanic brothers, my Asian brothers, my everybody, and my sisters. And that's all, y'all. Get checked out.
So get checked out. Now, when he says, my African-American brothers, y'all don't like going to the hospital. Oh, put me in that circle. I don't like going to the doctor. And I don't like going to the doctor because I've never been to the doctor. In adulthood, I've gone to the doctor. Let's see, one time I hurt my back at work and I just went to a clinic and they gave me some pills and it really was just fine after that. I went to the doctor after we had 4 kids so I could get a vasectomy. That's really the only overlap I've had with the medical industry at all. I didn't get the vaccine or anything. But his message here is kind of cool because a narcissist would make it all about them. A narcissist would maximize this for attention, emotion, pity, honor, whatever, adoration, whatever they can get you to emote in their direction. That's what it would be all about. So I don't know if he just naturally did this or he had some good PR people say, let's not make this all about you. Let's try and have a good message going forward that you can share with this community. But his message needs to be heard. Go get checked out. Because one thing that I bet you're going to hear before the end of this show There's a lot of people out there who have these cancer stories, or they went in to get something checked out, or they went in to get something else checked out. Or my own aunt, she had a coworker, she's a teacher, and some coworker thought what she found was a lump, and so she was thinking that she had cancer. And so then, just as a buddy system, 2 coworkers went with her to get the mammogram, to get the squishogram. And it turned out my aunt had cancer, and it was a total accident. And if she hadn't have been, being kind of a rock for a friend to lean on, we may not have one of my mom's sisters. So it's a tough situation, but he seems to be handling it better than I would. But if you have one of these accidental diagnoses, that would be amazing. There was a guy I worked with who had colon cancer. It's like, how do you even check if you had colon cancer? And he's like, well, one day after I was done, I looked and it was kind of red in there. So I went to the doctors. Oh, my goodness. I'm such an idiot. That's something I would kind of ignore. I'm like, ooh, that was weird. What did I eat? And then just move on about my day and not even think about it. And some of you may think that you're okay because, look, I'm like 34, whatever. No, it happens to younger people, too. Now, Sanders is older than you, for sure. But I guess he's trying to have some good come of this, and I don't blame him. Because a lot of people have this happen, and they either do the narcissist thing where they make it all about them, or they do the victim thing, which is still a little narcissistic. Like, woe is me. Why did this have to happen to me? I remember back in the day when the Cowboys actually won 2 Super Bowls in a row. And then the 49ers, who had been their main NFC rivals there in the last 2 NFC championship games, picks up what's probably the best defensive player in the game, Deion Sanders. And that seemed to be the difference maker. That year, Dallas and San Francisco met in the conference championship game. Winner goes to the Super Bowl, and San Francisco wins. Well, we got to see ultimately how much of a difference one person can make, because between that season and the next season, Deion Sanders moved from the 49ers to Dallas. And guess what? Dallas goes back and wins another Super Bowl. So, wow, one player really can make that big of a difference. Few people can say that. Deion Sanders can. But Deion Sanders, stayed here probably for the biggest chunk of his career, right? Maybe he was there for a little bit longer in Atlanta, but he stuck around here afterwards. This is his home. And we all have stories. Someone saw him who was they just sent me a message on Twitter. I used to see. Yeah, that was Seth. Grew up near Deion Sanders' old house in Prosper. I've seen him out in the wild, like at CVS and Subway back in the day. His property is a Kroger now. Oh, dude, I remember. In the late 90s where he had the house up in Plano with the big gates that said prime time. I don't even know if that's still there. But I remember seeing that. And that's cool as hell when you're 21 years old and you're a huge Dallas Cowboy fan, and you have been ever since you were a little kid. That was cool. But he's been a guy that the longer he's around, the more you know him, the more you like him. In 1999, he came out with a book. My friend Brandon got it. He's like, you got to read this. It's actually pretty good. I'm like, Deion Sanders can't be much of an author. He hadn't spent a whole lot of time writing. But no, I read it. It was a great little book. And it's a beautiful story about the first half of it, maybe first 75% of the book was his biography and him telling the story. Growing up in Florida, didn't have nothing. Remember the story he tells about that first time you signed that NFL contract. And for the first time in your life, you, your mom, your siblings, you don't have to worry about money. He said, that's a great feeling. I hope you get to feel what that feels like. I don't know what that feels like still. And I'm almost 50. Never worry about money again, please. It's the number one thing I worry about all day, every day. But that was great that he seemed to appreciate it and feel grateful for something that happened at such a young age to him. He seemed to have got that lesson. The last 25% of his book was talking about him coming to Jesus. And so he talks about this new life he has to have post-bladder. He's still Deion Sanders. He's still the same guy, but, without a bladder, without your full complement of health, things are necessarily going to be different. And listen to how appreciative and positive he is after the biggest hurdle of his life.
It's a totally different life. I mean, thank God. I depend on depend. If you know what I mean. I truly depend on depend. Like I cannot control my bladder. So I get up and go to the bathroom already 4 or 5 times a night. But then I'm sitting up there waking up, like my grandson. We in the same thing. We got the same problem right now. We going through the same trials and tribulations. We're trying to see who has the heaviest bag at the end of the night. Like it's ridiculous. But I'm making a joke out of it, but it's real. Like it is real. It is real. It is real. So if you see porta potty on the sideline, it's real.
And just like the guy who created Dilbert, Scott Adams, he got a cancer scare, and he says he has just a few months left to live. He's getting real existential on you, and I'm kind of paying more attention to him because hospice nurses will tell you that people that are on their way out, they'll be brutally honest. You can get a lot of good wisdom out of people like that. But I was also pleasant to see that in this press conference, Deion Sanders couldn't help to be the guy who he was in that book in 1999. He steered it back to God a couple times.
I'm truly thankful that God is so good. God is so good. You have no idea. You have no idea how good God has been to me. For me to be here. You have no idea. Thank you. Thank you both for everything. Let me add this for all you people that get upset when I start talking about the Lord. I never once through this whole journey said, God, why me? Because I would have to say, God, why being you sit me up here in front of these wonderful people? Why you give me the position of the head football coach of the prestigious university? Why you allow me to father 5 wonderful kids? Why you give me these relationships with these wonderful people? Why me, Lord? Did I have some of the things that I have? I can never say that. I can never say the other side because I'm going to have to ask that. I said, Lord, whatever it is that you're doing, let me know what it is so I could expedite the process. Because I know you got me. I've seen you have my back. I've seen you there in the midst of storms when nobody knew I was going through hell. I've seen you guide me and bring me through. Lord, I would never say why me, but let me know what I need to do so that I can help.
Man, that's pretty hard-hitting stuff. He appreciates sharing the bed with his grandson. They have the same problem filling up their diaper in the middle of the night. It's just too bad it took him having cancer and having to brush with death to really appreciate that. Do you appreciate your family like you should? Or do you need a death scare to do it? Do you need to go look mortality in the face before you come home and you're a little happier with your situation? Even though you don't have everything you want. Even though, I don't know, maybe you've put on a little weight. Maybe your spouse put on a little weight. Maybe your finances are a little tight. If not, a dumpster fire. Welcome to the club. Just don't wait till you have a brush with death to appreciate what you have. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM, WBAP.
The James Show Podcast.